الله تعالى أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم ينفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا وزن علما كريم يا رب العالمين اللهم نسألك علما نافعا ورزقا واسعا وشفاء لكل داء آمين رب العالمين. Inshallah, all of you are doing well. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you. We made it to session number 5. We're going to do a little bit of review, obviously, because it's a lot of things happened in the last time that we went over in our class. And so last time we talked about that there was a siege in Alexandria. We talked about how Shirku, the uncle of Salahuddin, rahimahullah, took him to Cairo. And so what happened that they were going to fight Shawar. And then what happened is that after that, they got pushed all the way over to Alexandria. And then Amalric, if you remember, he was a king. He is the king of Jerusalem. He comes with the Crusaders, and the vizier or the wazir of Egypt, Shawar, team up together to try to fight Shirku and Salahuddin, and they leave a siege of Alexandria. We'll get into. I'll actually go over all of it in a bit. So today we're going to go over that again, review it. We're going to go over that Shirku and Salahuddin is going to come for a third time to Cairo, and that will end Shawar and his reign as a wazir of Egypt, and that will lead to Salahuddin, rahimahullah, becoming the wazir of Egypt and taking over that position. Even though he's a Sunni, even though he's not part of the Fatimid, empire, but he's placed in that position, and we'll talk about why that is for. We'll talk about internal strife. Obviously, if you are a Sunni and you're a Kurd and you're not part of the Fatimids and they put you as the wazir, the people in Egypt are not going to like you, and they're going to try to take you out of power. So we'll talk about how Salahuddin, how he has to deal with that. We'll talk about how the Crusaders come in a place called Dimyat and they siege there. We'll talk about Salahuddin's father, how he passes away, and some things he says to him before he passes away. And then the end of the Fatimid state and Shiaism in Egypt. And we'll go a little bit further into Nur-ad-Din. We might actually get to the point where his death and what happens after Nur-ad-Din Zenki when he passes away. So let's go over this really quick as a timeline. Right? We talked about in 1099 is when Masjid al-Aqsa and Jerusalem was taken over by the Crusaders. 1137 is when Salahuddin was born. 1144, the first principality of the Crusaders, or the first Crusader state, falls to Imaduddin Zenki, who is the father of Nur-ad-Din. Shirku captures Alexandria. This is where we left off last class in 1167. Shirku captures Alexandria, but there's a siege by Amalric, the king of Jerusalem, and the Crusaders, and Shawar, which is the wazir of Egypt, the Shia wazir of the Fatimid wazir of Egypt. Okay, 1187 when Jerusalem falls to Salahuddin. So we're exactly 20 years out from there. Okay, so we're going to work up to that, but there's a lot of things happen in that 20 years. So it's going to take another 3 to 4 classes before we can get to that point. Because Salahuddin, rahimahullah, does he's very meticulous and making sure he cleans up everything before he goes to Jerusalem. All the hypocrites, all the Shiaism, those who oppose him, and then he goes in and actually goes to Jerusalem, and then he takes it over. And very, very smart move of him. All right, and so we're like right around here between the second and third crusade. Okay, so we talk about the Fatimid state. You'll follow some of these boxes here. In 1163, Shawar, the wazir of Egypt, is overthrown. We're going a little bit of review here. Remember, when he's overthrown from his position, he goes to Nur-ad-Din, right? Even Nur-ad-Din's a Sunni and he's a Shia, but he wants to get his power back. So he goes to Aleppo to seek assistance from Nur-ad-Din. And 1164, Nur-ad-Din sends Shirku. Remember, Shawar said, I will give you this much money, we'll make you the deputy. And then Nur-ad-Din says, okay, it sounds great. We'll get a lot of money and we'll get our position there. Sends Shirku. Shirku helps him, helps Shawar get his position back. But what has happened? Shawar says, there's no deal here. Get out of here, right? Get out of my country, right? You're not going to get anything. Shawar breaks his promise here, and Shirku and the Crusaders have to leave Egypt. Shawar is safe. That goes to 1167. where Shirkuh comes back for a second campaign against the Fatimids. Shawwar seeks help from the Crusaders, Almoric, the king of Jerusalem. There's a battle of Bababain, where the Fatimids and Crusaders fight Shirkuh and Salahuddin, and they were able to defeat them. And Shirkuh and Salahuddin, after the battle, they head all the way north to a place called Iskandaria or Alexandria. Okay, Shirkuh takes the city of Alexandria without a fight. That's important to know, because if you think about it, he got to Alexandria. This is a Fatimid state. He comes in, you think there'll be a battle. Like, who are you? Oh, you're from Nur ad-Din, right? We don't like you. You're the Zangids. But when he came to the door, they opened the door for him. They said, yeah, come on in. We want you as our leader. Because there were Sunni influences within Alexandria at that time. And so they welcomed him without a fight. Oh, you're Shirkuh? We heard about you. We don't like the Fatimids anyhow. And come inside and take our city. No problem. You be our leaders. So that's important to know how the Fatimid Empire in itself was kind of falling apart. Okay. We talked about the Zangid dynasty, how they have all these areas here. Let me see. Anyhow, whatever. They have this areas here. They have Damascus, they have Aleppo, they have Edessa, right? And then the Fatimids are here, and then the kingdom of Jerusalem's in the middle. So now we're talking about this Fatimid state here. Shirkuh is over here. This is Alexandria here. This is where Cairo's at. You can see how far Shirkuh and Salahuddin, after the battle close to Cairo, they headed all the way to Alexandria, right? To the point that Shirkuh was collecting tax from the people. That's how long he was there for, before Shawwar and the Crusaders even knew that he went all the way to Alexandria. Okay. And so here that this is where the siege is taking place, right? Shawwar and the Crusaders lay siege to the city for 3 months. Remember I told you what a siege is? That they stand outside the walls of your city. They keep on trying to bomb the walls. For 3 months, that means you cannot leave your city. Whatever food you have inside, that's what you have. Whatever water you have inside, that's all you have. And so for 3 months, they were going down in their supplies. But the Crusaders are having the same issue, because they're there, they're not in their homeland, they're shooting, their bombs and trying to break the fort, and they're running out of supplies. So they're getting a little tired also. Shirkuh does something very interesting. If you learn anything about him, Risk is his middle name, right? So at the middle of the night, he gets the cavalry and says, you know what, we're going to charge right at the Crusaders at nighttime. They're going to be sleeping. We're going to go right through them, go behind their lines, and then start attacking them from the back, attacking their supply lines, making it hard for them. And he told Salahuddin, who's quite young still, and it shows you how much trust he had in him, I'm leaving you in power of Alexandria. Okay, you will call the shots. I'm taking off, right? That's a big thing. If Shirkuh dies and he doesn't come back, Salahuddin is now taking over. So he must have the respect of the people in the first place, okay? So he does that, right? Almoric, the king of Jerusalem, is there, laying the siege. He's getting tired. He says, it looks like we're not getting anywhere here. So he tells Shirkuh, let's have an agreement. So what's the agreement? He said, we'll lift the siege. The Zangid army, Shirkuh, your army, go back to Aleppo, go back to Damascus. We, the Crusaders, will leave also, okay? And Shawwar will not hurt or not take anyone to trial in the city of Alexandria for letting Shirkuh come in. Because he's sovereign, he has sovereignty over Alexandria, right? He's the ruler of that area. So he says that I will not punish the people, right, for what they did to me, right? That's treason. But you know what? I'll let them slide. I won't do anything. They said, okay, we have agreement. The Zangid army, Shirkuh, takes off, goes back to Damascus. The Crusaders leave a little bit later. They meet up with Shawwar and make some agreements with him. What are those agreements? They made agreements, number one, that the Crusaders will protect Shawwar and the Fatimids. So the Crusaders will stay in Cairo. A group of them will stay there, just in case what? In case Nur ad-Din and his army comes back. Okay, because that's not going to be good news for the Crusaders, because they'll have them cornered, right? They'll have this time doesn't show them out. Let me go back to the way. They'll have Damascus here, and they'll have Egypt, and they'll attack from both sides. So the Crusaders like, yes, we'll help you stay in power. Shawwar, we want you to stay in power. If Nur ad-Din takes over, big issues. Okay, so the Fatimids are also say, we'll give you 100,000 dinars. That's a lot of money. These are gold coins. It's not like our money. It's made from copper. Who knows what it's made from? And these are real gold coins they're getting. And so they're getting 100,000. The Crusaders are all about money if you didn't find this out right. They're not really about, Jesus is our love and, we don't care about money. But you could buy them over pretty easy. Okay. So 100 dinars, they said, okay, that's fine. We won't attack you, Shawar. Fatimids, you stay in power. We'll go back to Jerusalem. Okay. Also, the Crusaders were representative in terms of the ruling and participating in the government. So now they have a say in the government seat. You can see the Fatimid state is already falling apart. If you're going to let the Crusaders have a seat in your government, that means that you're desperate, right? You're really, really desperate, if you will. Okay. So Amalric likes this. I get money. I'm going to go back to Jerusalem. I know what Amalric's thinking. Next year, what am I going to do? I'm going to come back to Cairo. I'm going to try to fight them and take over. He invaded Cairo 5 times. Okay. So even it doesn't show how much the Crusaders really, really, really wanted Cairo. They never got it, but that's what he's thinking of. So they have this deal. Number 2, just so the point here is that look at this quote unquote Muslim leader who's working with the Crusaders to fight other Muslims or even in general, right? And so this is always something, and this, especially in today's world, always in hope. I'm not trying to judge people or saying have bad thoughts, but any leader that we have in our Muslim country, even how great our Muslim countries are, know that our enemies are talking to them and trying to get them on the other side. They're offering money, protection. Whether our leaders say no, get away, we don't want to talk with you, or slide it on the table and we'll do something else, if you will. Keep me in power, I'll make sure we don't attack you. That's just how things work. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ said, do not seek leadership. Because you seek leadership, problem in the heart. You want power, people to thank you, people to look up to you. And what happens, most people, like maybe about 99% of the people, usually don't handle that very well. They sink into the, give me 100, 1,000 gold dinars, right? Let me do this, if you will, and they end up selling out their people. But like Yusuf alayhi salam, he takes a position in the Egyptian army, government, but he's a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was able to control that, right? And there's some people we have that, alhamdulillah. Some people are able to be righteous and be in the government and lead people and not be affected by these things. But most people, unfortunately, as the Prophet said, to give a Bani Adam a valley of gold, they won't want a second one. And if they get the second one, what do you think is going to happen? They want the third one. Just like children, one cookie, they're going to ask for a second one. And then a third, and you're in trouble now. You're in trouble. The whole box is gone now, right? Adults are pretty much the same thing. This is not cookies, but there's people's lives and money and so forth. 1169, third campaign against the Fatimids. Okay. So the Fatimid state is pretty weak. Amalric decides to invade a 4th time here. He goes and takes a fortress in Bilbas, this area that's outside of Cairo, but it was one of the stopping points before you get to Cairo. So he got it, he plundered it, killed people, took it over. Shawar doesn't do anything there. It says here that he burned old Cairo. I mentioned this last week also. So either he did it this time or did it last time. Just so he didn't want Amalric to come and take their wealth. He's shown that I'll burn the city down and you're not going to get anything if you're going to try to take our city over. Okay. Amalric comes to Cairo. Shawar once again says, I'll pay you 1 million. Okay, this is the numbers are going up. It's like a basketball contract now, right? 1 million dinars, right? That he'll give you. And Amalric says, I love this. Every year you come back here, you get money. That's pretty much all you have to do. And so 1 million dinars, Shawar gives it to an agreement for Amalric to go back to Jerusalem. Don't attack us, go back. Okay. A portion was supposed to be paid immediately and the rest be collected later on. And the rest really wasn't collected later on. But so Amalric is still waiting for his money. Okay. The Fatimid Khalifa, remember the Wazir and the Khalifa are 2 different people. The Khalifa is, I don't say he's a righteous person, but he reached out to Nuruddin. So this guy Shawar has given up our money. He's working with Amalric, the Crusaders. I know you're Sunni, but I'll give you 1/3 of the profit of this land in Egypt, and you can have Shirku to stay here if you come and get rid of him. That's what the Fatimid Shia Khalifa at that time, his name is Ayub, that what he wanted, if you will. So he's working against his own wazir. Okay. So Nur ad-Din sees this, he says, sure, we'll take that offer, right? Go ahead. They want it anyway. They want the Fatimid state to break down anyhow. Because if Salahuddin will go and take over Jerusalem, guess what? The Fatimids are right there and they would attack them. So you have to clean them out first and foremost, okay? One thing you see with the Prophet ﷺ, when he's in Medina, he has a strong campaign, or at least focusing on the munafiqun. And we saw what they did in the Battle of Uhud, right? It really almost blew up the, big, caused a big defeat there. There was a loss at that there. But the munafiqun is always working in the background. And so you have to really clear them out to find out who they are, or else you're gonna cause problem, whatever prosperity you have. And that's unfortunately some of our Muslim countries have a lot of that, aspects to it. It's part of dunya, unfortunately. Okay. And so next year, 1169. So here comes Nur ad-Din. He sends Shirkuh with 8,000 horsemen. Okay. Usually if you're on a horseman, you're probably a knight. You're not just any type of soldier. Okay. That means you could ride on the horse and you could be really good with your sword, etc. And so Salahuddin once again comes. Salahuddin's kind of tired. He's been there twice already, and it's not really his thing. There's a statement that's mentioned here where he says, I do not desire to go with my uncle to Egypt. And I wept when I was compelled to go. So he started crying. I don't want to go. Stop taking me. I've been there twice. I understand the importance of it. I had no taste for war, but Allah decreed it for me. And you're going to see a lot of these things that are happening to Salahuddin is this a qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's just like he was there and this happened and somehow he got pushed for it. Subhanallah, right? And so as long as you're in that field, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open doors for you. So like I said, he's a grown man that's crying. Like right now he's around 30 years old or so. Okay, but he wants to study with the scholars in Syria, and that's kind of like was his thing, if you will. Obviously, you go to war, the big chance you're going to die too. Different narrations mention that Al-Mu'arrikh also comes at that time, and either that Shirkuh attacks him or Al-Mu'arrikh retreats. So anyhow, Shirkuh comes with his army. He comes to Cairo, and very easily they're able to come and defeat Shalwar. There wasn't much resistance at all. 8,000 soldiers of Shirkuh is like a 100,000 person army, to how strong he was. So he came in there. They got Shalwar, and Shalwar was like, oh, hi, remember me? I'm the one that promised you all this money and stuff. Can we be friends? Shirkuh was like, yeah, we could be friends, no problem. Right? And so what does he do? The Khalifa, the Fatimid Khalifa, does something that nobody would predict. He makes Shirkuh the wazir of the Fatimid state. Shalwar, you lost your position. What happens to Shalwar? Shalwar was planning and plotting to kill Shirkuh and Salahuddin. Of course, this guy knows that he's going to die soon. Shirkuh is now the wazir, it's over. Okay, they took me out of my position. So he's trying to plot against them. And so Shalwar's son tells him, don't do this. If you do this, Nur ad-Din will come. He will kill you even more. They'll take over this whole area. Let's keep it Fatimids for now. Okay. Shirkuh lures Shalwar into a dark alley away from the people, and he's assassinated. Some say Salahuddin is the one that kills him, or some other person. That's the end of Shalwar. I don't think any of you guys are crying about that. I don't think anybody wept for this man, right? This man was treacherous, lied, worked with the Crusaders over and over again. Alhamdulillah, he's gone, right? And so he's killed. He's gone from the picture there. We don't have to worry about him anymore. The Khalifa puts Shirkuh as a wazir, okay? Shirkuh, this major commander that you all know, like this is an amazing individual, mashallah. He finally got his position. Imagine what he could do in that position. So many things. Remember I told you that a lot of things that happen to Salahuddin is all about qadr? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kind of moved pieces for him? Well, this is exactly what happened. After just 2 months of Shirkuh being the wazir in Cairo of the Fatimid Shia state, he dies. Naturally. No one poisoned him, just a natural death. So now what's happening now, right? So the Khalifa is thinking that, you know what? We have to put a Zangid. We have to put a Syrian. we have to put someone from the Sunni side as our wazir, just so we please Nur ad-Din, so he doesn't come and take Cairo from us. So who could we do? Shirkuh was number one. Made sense. But now he just died, and we're looking for somebody. So the Khalifa tries to pick, who do you think? He tries to pick the one that is the weakest person in the pack, the one that you can control. You know, the one that, mashallah, has a beard and says, alhamdulillah, mashallah, astaghfirullah. That brother, you can take his money from him, you can push him, and he says, oh, I forgive you. Pick that guy, So he says, this kid, I like him. He's more religious. He doesn't look like he's a big soldier. Salahuddin, you're the next wazir. So the Khalifa, the Fatimid Khalifa, puts Salahuddin as the wazir. All of a sudden, he didn't want to go on this battle. He finds out now he's the wazir of Egypt, okay? Which means that he has more power than the Khalifa. Okay, the wazir is the one that really runs the country. So Salahuddin, no one called him by that name yet. His name was Yusuf, right? He didn't get that title Salahuddin until later on. So Yusuf ibn Ayyub, who's a Kurd, not even a Zangid, is now the wazir of a massive area, okay? And that he's put into this power. I gave him the title of Malik al-Nasr, the victorious king. Okay, everyone gets a big title if you have not caught on to that already in this class. Okay, so he gave him this title, right, to honor him, make him feel good and smile that yes, Nur ad-Din, look how we like your people, like we're friends now, etc. We're working together, and also the people liked him too. Remember, Salahuddin was just a nice guy. One of the things that he did, he abolished tax. Anyone that does that, right? If Newsom would do that, if the guy who's our president right now probably do that, some of us might say, maybe this guy has a little toba inside of him, maybe something, a little bit, right? So he didn't like taxing. And what happened is Shawar used to tax the people a lot. So he said there's no taxing anymore. Islamically, there is something, we have the zakat and we have sadaqat, right? It's a political thing if a leader wants to tax. It's not really a religious thing. Zakat is what we know is from the deen. But the leader of that area could additionally put tax on if the country needs it. But most leaders go further and further, right? You buy a house, but you still pay property tax. Why? I paid my house off. Can't I just live in my own house? Why? The land is there. I've been living on it for so long, right? So you still, doesn't matter. For the rest of your life, you're going to be paying this, right? So that's kind of what goes on. Most people don't understand the tax system, and that sometimes it's quite severe on people. And so he makes a good move. He takes that out because they get enough money from agriculture and other things. And so he doesn't tax the people. He spends on the people so much. Gives them sadaqat, charity, right? He's spending on them. Anyone who asks for something, he gives them. It's mentioned that his finance minister would hide his money because if he knew someone was in need, he would ask, give me something, let me give to this person. And see, well, they will tell him that we don't have anything for you right now because he was also always giving things. Like the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where Anas says that if anyone came to the Prophet ﷺ, he would promise him to give him something, and if he has something, he would give him. Right? I'm not saying Salahuddin is the same level of the Rasulullah ﷺ, but that's an example there. He was very, very generous. Right? His brother Turun Shah comes with military support, right? Because if you think about it, somebody's going to be plotting him. You have a Kurd who is a Sunni inside Egypt on the Fatimid Empire. 100%, you'll be silly to think that nobody's trying to plot against him. 100%, someone's there trying to say, how can we kill him? How can we take power? Right? Always know that. And that's unfortunately how dunya works. Right? If you ever become the VP of your company, or the director, or the supervisor, know very well there's other people saying, I wish I had that position. They're clapping for you, right? When you get your promotion, at the same time, they might be plotting against you. Hopefully they're not, right? Hopefully there's some good people around there. But know that there's so many people trying to vie for these positions. That's, once again, that's how dunya works. So people are plotting against him. We'll talk about that in a bit. But look now, this is now the Zankid dynasty. When you put a Zankid or Salahuddin, so Kurd, but nonetheless, he's working for Salahuddin in as a wazir of the Fatimid Empire, you pretty much said that Fatimid Empire is done. It's over. So basically, they have control. This means that now Nur ad-Din has all this area here. Okay, Salahuddin even goes afterwards, and we'll talk about this briefly, where he goes and cleans up all Mecca and Medina, and he also goes all the way down to Yemen and cleans all the Shia influence there also. And he makes his way towards Libya, what we call Tunis today, and so forth this way, all the way to Maghreb, all the way to Morocco, right? So he expands the Zankid dynasty. Look at all this area here. And know what the Crusaders have? This strip of land right here, right? Does the story look kind of familiar? What's going on today? So you have somebody who's occupying this little small area of land right there, right? But here, Salahuddin had a much bigger land. You have Antioch, you have Tripoli, Trablus, and you have Quds, Jerusalem. These are the three principalities of the Crusaders that they're clinging on. All the rest are all Muslim run now. But much different than the Seljuks, where they had leaders in all these cities, but they were against each other. Right? Remember, Aleppo had a Seljuk leader, and it was against his brother in Damascus. Here, all of this is one guy, and that's Nur ad-Din. Nur ad-Din is the Sultan of all this area, not the Khalifa. Well, you didn't really care about that term. The Khalifa's in Baghdad over here, but he's just a name on paper. He's not really doing anything. But nonetheless, all this is now Zangid territory. Right? So this is a lot of area, a lot of wealth, they have a lot of power. You would say that they go straight over to Jerusalem right now and finish it off. But that is someone who might not know military experience and how do you plan and plot. Salahuddin does that much, much later. He's thinking about all this other area in Baghdad and over here in Mosul, how we could also clean those areas up. And like I mentioned, we already talked about in Yemen and so forth, that he was able to defeat and to kind of push all the Shia out of those type of areas. There was a individual that asked me last week about Ismailis and why are Ismailis so big in Pakistan when they started off in this area here. One of the reasons is Salahuddin, because they got pushed out so far, and then on trade routes, they end up moving all the way over to Yemen, and then Yemen had a good connection with Karachi and what's now known as Karachi and Pakistan. And that's how they got an influence there, and they were more welcome over there. And now that ended up being their home base, because they had all these Sunni issues over here because of Salahuddin and the Ayyubid Empire and everything else spreading out. They had to retreat somewhere else. And that's kind of through trading, that's how they came up. And there's a lot more to say about that. But just a short answer for somebody who was asking me that question, why are there so many in these areas now? And that's kind of where it kind of came from, if you will. At least a small explanation of that. Salahuddin's rule in Egypt. So what does he do? Right? Invest heavily in charity, public works, welfare institutes, abolishes tax upon the people, builds hospitals, madrasas, and ribat. Ribat is like these kind of like a free hotel for travelers, if you will. The thing about madrasas and schools, one of the things though he's thinking about, and this is the same thing what Nur ad-Din does also, is there's so much Shia influence, and the most common people don't even know. They just follow what's being told to them. So he wants to make sure that the Sunni teaching is well established in the land. So he starts building all these Sunni type schools where Hanafi fiqh is taught, Shafi'i fiqh is taught, not the fiqh of the Shia and the Ismailis, right? He stops their festivals or Shia festivals that they would do for Hussein and for all these different type of things. He cancels those type things out, right? So that people don't follow these things anymore. He supports scholars, Sufis, the poor, winning the hearts of the secular lines. He lives a very simple life. Remember, I kind of mentioned last week, he didn't live in the palace. He lived outside on a tent. He was like a normal tent. He was lie down on the tent. He had his guards around him, right? And anybody could walk up to him. There's a story where one of the soldiers comes up to him and says, Salahuddin, I need you to sign this paper. And he was tired. He's like, what? He's like, I'll do it later. And the Mamluk, this soldier tells him, the Sultan will sign this paper now. So Salahuddin looks at him and says, who's this guy? He's like, I don't have an inkwell. You have to have an inkwell to write. So I don't have an inkwell, I have my pen. And the soldier says, I see it in the back of your tent right there. So you know what Salahuddin does? Doesn't cut off his head. He gets up off the ground, walks over there, gets the inkwell, signs the man's paper, and lets him go. There you go. Right. That's fine. You can't do that anywhere else, right? But he cared that this man needed something, and even though he was tired, he would do it. We hear these other stories we'll talk about later on, how he would help people, even the Crusaders, women that were suffering, that he would care for them and do other things for them. Especially when he took over Jerusalem, he did amazing things, and we'll talk about that later on, right? So his generosity, his justice, right? He distributed wealth amongst the soldiers. That's always a good, smart thing to do. So the army's on your side, right? Not against you, because there's always a chance of a coup, right? Some of our countries have gone through this, and they're quite scared if you're not with the army. So all these type of things, people say this guy's a lot different. He's not about the gold and the silk and all the jewelry, but he's like one of us, right? And so that's why he won the hearts over there. The Caliph of the Fatimids realized that his authority was weakening, and so he kind of worked with whatever influence the Shia still had. Remember, they didn't go anywhere. They're still in Egypt, right? The Fatimids and the Shia and the army, they're still there, right? Sunnism is kind of making a comeback. And so they're plotting against Salahuddin. And so what they do, they make this plan that they will tell the Crusaders to come and attack at Alexandria. And when Salahuddin leaves, because he's a new leader, he has to go help his people, then we'll take over the city. And then when he comes back, he won't find a place for him. Salahuddin knows exactly what's kind of going around. And so what he does, they have the attack, he sends an army, he doesn't leave his place at all. Also, within the city, he's heeding that all these people remember, they're all former Shia, Fatimid, lovers, if you will. And so he has everyone all the servants and all these people. So anyone could, back in those days, they could drop some poison in a cup and you're dead. Very, very easy to do. And so he has his military generals in Qarakush. It's a great name, right? Anyone know anyone named Qarakush? If you have a son, name him Qarakush, inshallah ta'ala. Right? Hard name to use. So Qarakush comes in and he says, Qarakush, he dismisses everyone from the palace. Everyone get out. Qarakush, you are the leader now of the palace, and you put in who you are. Because how do you take over a country when you have people who are still of the old regime? Same thing happened like Morsi, right? Rahimullah, when he came in, everyone's still Mubarak people. I don't know how you're supposed to even know who has the keys to this door. How do you work with that people? What's going on in Syria right now? How do you even take over with, I don't understand how that works. It's kind of very, very hard. You have a lot of people that are trying to, to plan against you. So there's this army, the Sudanese army, that's part of the Fatimids, 50,000 soldiers. That's a lot of people. Plan to come and attack Salahuddin. Salahuddin was able to gather his soldiers. I don't know how much exactly they had, didn't really mention in the books, and was able to put down this revolt that the Shia was rising up against him. A lot of people were killed. This is all happening inside the city walls. So it's like a civil war that's happening. The Crusaders are probably laughing and clapping their hands. And so this happens there. Salahuddin's able to stop this. He gets all the soldiers, and what they tell him is, you should kill all these people. He's going to come and kill you. What does Salahuddin do? He says, I'll let him go. You guys go live in Giza, far away from here. All right, Giza's technically not too far from Cairo, but where the pyramids are, you guys go over there. And he just sent them and he let them go over there. Okay. You guys remember the Prophet ﷺ in Medina when the Jewish tribes, Banu Qaynuqa, Banu Qurayza, Banu Nadir, would plot against the Prophet ﷺ and he would kick them out. And they're supposed to kill him. They're like, oh, no, don't kill us. He's like, okay, I won't kill him. Can we take our stuff with us? Okay, go ahead, take your stuff with you. And then they went to Khaybar. And they built a whole city there and they plotted against him. Right? Similar, subhanAllah. Here, Salahuddin said, okay, I'll let you guys go. Just get out of the city and live over there, if you will. Don't come back. And alhamdulillah, for what I know, they didn't attack him again. Well, this was Salahuddin. Right? He will let them go like that, even though a lot of soldiers did die. But that's how he was able to put down this revolt that was happening against him. So a lot of things are happening there. He's sitting in that palace knowing, who's going to attack me next. In 1170, remember, he takes over in, what year did we say? 1169. So it only takes 1 year. Believe me, people want him out of power as quick as possible. Only takes 1 year, and the Crusaders are back on the scene. They're working with the remnants of the Fatimids, inside of Cairo, and they go and attack this place called Dumyat. Dumyat, I'll put on the map here. Here's Alexandria. It's on the other side. The Egyptians call this the Delta because if you see the Nile River, it splits into two. One goes to the right, one goes to the left, right? And so this is Dumyat area. It's a pretty big city in Egypt. So they attack this port city over here, okay? Look where Cairo's at. It's quite far. If you get Salahuddin to go all the way up here to the edge of Cairo, he won't have time to come back if you're trying to, take him out of power. Once again, he understands that what's going on. The Crusaders realized that they were in a serious situation, being surrounded by the Zangids and Egypt belonging to them, so they're getting squashed. So Almoric says, I got to do something. I tried 5 times to take over Cairo. Let me try Dumyat. Maybe that's my good luck here. We'll start here and we'll work our way down. So Almoric is still on the scene here as the king of Jerusalem. He brings 50,000 soldiers with him, and they come by boat. Obviously, you see here is a port city. So if I get to another map here, it's always good to look at maps. Here's Jerusalem there. And so they take their boats and come over this area here, okay? And come over there. This is kind of like what Dumyat's at, this area here. Okay. So they come by boat here, right? So look, Salahuddin does not go out because he knows that if he goes out, someone's going to try to overthrow him. He knows the trick already. And they already tried that around, especially if you have 50,000 soldiers that try to kill you just months ago. You're going to stay in Cairo and make sure that you hold your seat down there. But he sends an army out there, right? He sends his uncle. So you always notice that they always stick with the family members because you can't really trust anyone else sometimes. So his uncle Mahmoud and his nephew Omar, they go out with the army. Nur ad-Din sends troops to support him from Syria, and they go and fight the Crusaders that they come into Dumyat. What they were doing back in those days, if you go back to this area here, you could see how you could come down in these waterways here, and then you could come through the Nile and go all the way down to Cairo if you want. So what they would do, they would put a big chain in the water. And when the Crusaders' boats will come, they'll pull the chain, and it would hit the boat, and the boat can't go any further. Sounds quite simple to do, but these are very, very big chains that they had, right? And so that's all you need to do is pull that chain, and then the boats will just start stacking up on each other, and they can't move, and you can just shoot them or send cannons on them and so forth. So that's how they defended their area there. So they start fighting them, they block it with this big chain. There's a big storm that happens where a lot of their ships, by the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by the nasr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that these ships end up breaking apart, right? Many people drown. After 50 days being sieged by water, 50 days they're there trying to get into Egypt, right? Get through the canals, get through into the Nile. Finally, that's over. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants them victory, and they defeat the Crusaders. This is Salahuddin, even though he's not there, this is his first victory as the wazir against the Crusaders. Now, when the people hear about that, they're like, well, maybe he's not a bad guy, even though he's Sunni, he's a Kurdish guy, but maybe he's a leader we want, right? And so that really won the hearts over a lot of Egyptians, that he went out and he's offending against the Crusaders. They're not our friends anymore. Almoric could care less about us. And when they see Salahuddin was able to do that, at least send his army out and his family, then he started winning the hearts of them. Okay. So that's the first battle that he got a victory of, and as being the wazir. Okay. We're going to talk about Najm ad-Din, his father. I'm not sure why this slide is here for. This should be a little bit later. Okay, let me see. Yeah, I'll come back to this I'll come back to this in a bit. So in 1171, so we're 1 year later now, after the battle of the victory of in Dumyat, Salahuddin really starts focusing on cleaning up the country. Remember, Shiaism is very prevalent in the city. The Shia adhan is still going on. At the Juma khutbah, the Shia Khalifa's name is being said, is being mentioned every time, right? Not the Khalifa, the Abbasid Khalifa in Baghdad. So people are still hearing this. You have all the books of the Shiaism or Ismailism, right, are all still there. And so what he does slowly, he starts removing the Shia from positions of power. So he takes a lot of the qadis and puts in Sunnis that are now the qadi is a judge of the land. Okay. He bans the words of Hayya al-Khair al-Amal. Well, this is one of the things that the Shia will put in their adhan, where they'll say Khair al-Amal wa Muhammad wa Ali Khair al-Bashar. Where they'll say that the Prophet ﷺ and Ali is the best of creation. Obviously, these are things that are not things that the Prophet ﷺ did, right? And so he banned that. He said, no more adding this into the adhan. The Khalifa is too weak to challenge Salahuddin, so he goes over this. He orders that Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali be mentioned in the khutbah. Have you guys ever been to a khutbah where someone says, Inna alhamdulillahi nahmaduhu wa nasta'inahu, and they start and they say that, peace and blessings be upon Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman and Ali, right? And you're wondering, why are they mentioning all the khulafa for? Well, that's kind of a sign that, this guy's Sunni. It's like your Sunni patch. Because if you're praising Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman, then you must be a Sunni. So he said, put this wording in all of the khutbahs, of the Jummah khutbahs, right? And that's why today we still see on Membar, people still do that. Even though we don't really need to do it anymore in terms of showing that this masjid is a Sunni masjid, right? But it's good to send blessings upon them. So it just stayed as a tradition to some people that still do it. So we made sure that was in there. Okay. Then he also, like I mentioned, he established that the Sunni madhahib will be taught in Azhar. Remember, Azhar was founded as a Shia university, but now they are teaching the Hanafi fiqh and the Shafi'i fiqh and the Maliki and so forth at this time. He cancels the privileges of the Fatimid Khalifa, that he gets this much money, this much stipend, he gets to live in this area, nice area. Kind of says, you're living here now, and we're going to cut some of your wages, etc. And the Khalifa knows exactly what's happening. He's not that dumb. But this is Salahuddin, right? He can't do too much there if he will. In 1171, at the same time, he orders that the name of the Fatima Khalifa be taken out of the khutbahs. So when you start your khutbah, alhamdulillah, nahmadu, and you go on, and you said, in the name of also in this khutbah is on the authority of the Khalifa of the Abbasid. So now they have to put the Abbasid Khalifa. And once you do that, that's pretty much you saying that this area is sovereign to the Sunnis now. This is not, Fatimid Khalifa is done. It's over. 200 years or 280 years of Fatimid rule in Cairo went down with that one statement. Once that statement's done, then the Fatimids are done. Ismailism in Egypt is gone, even though there's still some there. It's very interesting when I lived in Egypt, because there's one masjid, it's called Masjid Hussein. Any Masris in here? Any Egyptians?
I was there.
Oh, you were there? Okay, good. Right. And so it's supposed to have the head of Hussein in this masjid. I highly doubt it, but anyhow. There's like 3 other masjids that claim the same thing.
Not a Boris there.
Yes, that's what I want to say. There's like Desi, Ismailis and Boris that they're like, how did you make it? And they live there in Egypt, and they live in this one area, and they all come down. And I thought I'm in the middle of Delhi or Mumbai or something like that. I'm in Egypt. All of a sudden, like, where do you guys come from? And they're all speaking Hindi and Urdu and stuff like this, and so that's a sacred place for them still. So there's still reverence of this. The government hasn't cut it off totally. But up to date, Azhar does not teach any Shia fiqh. They'll talk about them as a sect of Islam and their beliefs, but it's not a madhab you could learn in Egypt today or in Jamiat al-Azhar. Okay, so there's still remnants of them today, or that are there. The Abbasid Khalifa's name was mentioned. Look how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does things. In this year, this is only 2 years that Salahuddin now has been the wazir. The Fatimid Khalifa dies. Okay, he was only 21 years old, quite a young guy anyhow, right? He dies, and so guess what? There's no Khalifa that's put back after. Allah just made it where it's kind of just, they didn't have to assassinate him, they didn't have to kill him. People started telling Salahuddin after this, you took out his name, and he died a couple days later. If you would just waited, it would have been easy for you, Salahuddin. And he's like, obviously he didn't know. Okay, but Allah made it with subhanAllah, he just died on his own. And so just like Shirku, so Allah just made it that he died, and Salahuddin got pushed up to the front of the line, right? So that is it. There's no more Shiaism in Egypt. I mean, there's still people that are belief of it, but as a government entity, it is now gone from the ranks there, if you will, in the mentioning. So alhamdulillah, Salahuddin is doing a lot of things here. He burned all the books of the Shia of the Ismailis, right? Abolished the Shia festivals, that is, I mentioned like that festivals for Hussein and other things. Azhar, I talk about Azhar. The Fatimid currency was abolished, so now coins are made with Salahuddin's name on it, and or the Abbasid Khalifa, right? So they'll mint coins right after a change, if you will. He moved the capital away from Cairo, because Cairo was known as the capital of the Shia, of the Ismailis. So he moved it away just to show distinction that we're totally different, if you will. And he moved it outside of Cairo, a different area, if you will. Nur-ad-Din and Salahuddin made great efforts of starting the Shiaism. Now, I want you guys to think about this really quick. If I go back to this, I don't have a good map here in any of these pictures here, do I? Kind of. If you look here, you have Aleppo and you have Damascus there, right? What is this? You have Aleppo and you have Damascus. Now, this is where Nur-ad-Din kind of owns. Now, if you look at Egypt here, and it's off the screen here, okay, it's if you think about it, it's much bigger than what Nur-ad-Din is ruling over. And it's richer, much more wealthier than what Nur-ad-Din has in Aleppo and Damascus in this area here. A lot of this area is all desert anyhow, even though it's in the green there, okay? Oh, the Euphrates has some good land there. And so guess what Nur-ad-Din's probably thinking? Salahuddin has a bigger area than I do. He has more wealth than I do. I wonder if he's thinking of overthrowing me. I wonder if he, I wonder if he understands where his position according to me. And Salahuddin is like, oh, he's a mashallah, subhanallah, alhamdulillah type guy. He's not really thinking about, let me plot against Nur-ad-Din and let me cause this, and I want to get more land and riches, and dunya is my goal in my life. He's not really thinking about that already, okay? But Nur-ad-Din starts thinking about these things. And if you were ruling at that time, you were probably thinking about that too. This time was only about people trying to kill you and take your power. So he starts thinking about these things, okay? So there's this is a real fortress, this is a real Crusader fortress in this place called Kerak, Urdun, in Jordan. I want to go visit this place. This place looks amazing. How would you attack that place, okay? That's the street on the bottom there. If you were standing there, by the time you start walking up this wall, you're already going to get arrows shot at you and sliding down, right? It's almost like can't penetrate this at all. So Salahuddin, Nur-ad-Din sends a letter to Salahuddin, let's attack Kerak. Why they want to attack Kerak for? I don't have a map again. I should have maps. I always tell myself this, but let me see. Okay, so Kerak would be somewhere like over here, Jordan area. I don't know if you guys see my little arrow there. And this is one of the main routes for the Hujjaj to go down to Medina and Mecca. Okay. And what the Crusaders would do, they would attack the Muslim caravans that are going for Hajj or going for Umrah. And so multiple times you have Muslims dying. They don't have weapons, they're just going for Umrah, and so you wouldn't attack pilgrims, right? Pilgrims are known at that time as being like they're sacred. You don't attack them. Well, they'll be attacked a lot, and we're going to talk about this later on, how so many of them died, and we're going to talk about who was responsible for that. So this fort here is close to the route down to Mecca to Medina. And so Nur-ad-Din sends a letter to Salahuddin and says, Salahuddin, meet me in Kerak, because we're going to try to take that fort. Salahuddin's a lot closer to it. Egypt is right close to Jordan, and Syria is still maybe equal distance, if you will. So Salahuddin gets there first, lays siege to the fort. He's attacking it. Nur-ad-Din's coming. Remember I told you about Nur-ad-Din's thoughts in his head a little bit? Remember I talked about that? I want you guys to keep that in mind. When Nur-ad-Din starts coming closer, Salahuddin gets up and leaves and goes back to Cairo. Nur-ad-Din gets there and says, hey, what did you do? You were sieging the fort. I was coming there. If I would have arrived there, we would have took this over. We would have destroyed this fort. Why did you leave for? Right? Like, why don't you want to meet me? Because ever since Salahuddin got into power in 1169, this is 1174, he never met face to face with Nur-ad-Din yet. And he was a little bit of a, remember, humble person that he didn't want to meet him because, you know, he'll probably crumble in front of whatever he had to tell him. That, you know, either you're going to be removed or you're going to do this. And so, and also it's quite far away. And they have the Crusaders in Jerusalem between them. So they never got to meet. So this is going to be one of the first meetings. So Nur ad-Din was kind of looking for this. And when Salahuddin left and gone, Nur ad-Din kind of got a little agitated by that. So why did you go for it? And so he said, I left because there was a uprising that was happening in Cairo. And so that's the reason why I left. Okay. And the Nur ad-Din's like, okay, that's good. Yeah, keep the city under control. But how would Salahuddin know that? Right? And then I think I told you I went over this about maybe in the second class that we had, is that they have a thing called homing pigeons. Right. So the Arabs were very good about this. The Crusaders didn't have this because they're foreigners in this land. So the Arabs have been living there for very long. So they have these pigeons that are pigeons, the Cairo pigeons. They have the Damascus pigeons. They have the Aleppo pigeons, the Mosul pigeons, Dumyat, the Alexandria pigeons. And the pigeon, you take that pigeon with you and you tie a little note on its foot. You do 2 or 3 of them in case one dies or a hawk eats one of them, and let them go, and they'll fly right back to Cairo, right? Much faster than a guy on a horse would do. Okay, guy on a horse, he has to stop, he has to sleep, etc. And you might get intercepted too. Birds are in the sky, kind of hard to find them. And it's the same thing too. If you have a bird that's knows Salahuddin, and you can send it and go to Salahuddin also, it knows that area, it comes, it lands, and you take the message and you read it. That's a WhatsApp that they had back at that time, right? And so maybe he got a message that, hey, there's an uprising in Cairo, you need to come back. Wherever it was, it happened. And so Nur ad-Din's like, okay, I see your point, no problem. Meet me next year. That we will come back next year and we'll fight these guys, okay? Same time, same place type thing. Same thing happens. Salahuddin gets there, lays siege to the town. Nur ad-Din's coming, and Salahuddin gets up and leaves. Nur ad-Din's like, hey, this is the second time you did this to me. What's happening? You don't want to meet me? Like, what's happening? I'm getting a little suspicious of you now. He said, no, my dad's sick. I had to go back, and I wanted to see him. Lo and behold, his dad was sick. Once again, did Salahuddin really know that? It was just a coincidence, or someone told him? It worked out for him. He went back, left Nur ad-Din. They didn't defeat Kerak. And now Nur ad-Din says, you know what? I'm coming to you. I'm coming to Cairo. Now, Salahuddin, where are you going to go? We can't do anything now. You're in Cairo now, right? And so his dad, he meets with his dad, meets with his brothers, meets with his family. What should we do? This is Salahuddin. Send a letter to him, say, I submit to you. I'm your subordinate, right? You're the Sultan, right? I am the Wazir. I'm over here. I answer to you. His dad says, Salahuddin sent this letter. If Nur ad-Din will come here, and in front of the gathering of all the people in the government, he says, if Nur ad-Din, he told Salahuddin, if Nur ad-Din will come today, this is his father talking, that I will kiss his feet. And if he fought against you, I would help him fight against you. And I will kill you if he wants me to kill you. Salahuddin's like, oh, what's going on, Dad? Right? And then after that, everyone dispersed. He meets with his dad. He said, Dad, what was all that about? So don't worry. Well, we have to show a message here. Salahuddin, okay? We're not going to take over. No one's going to take over Salahuddin. Salahuddin, Nur ad-Din is our leader. He's our Sultan, right? We love him. He took care of our family, right? He loves the Ayyubid family. Look what he done to us. We don't want his power. But we have to make sure the messaging is very, very clear. That we need to send a message to him, send him that letter, that I'm submitting to you, you are my Sultan, let me know, we're here to serve you, Nur ad-Din. And so Salahuddin does that. He finally takes his dad's advice, he sends the letter, he said, don't worry, I'm not going to kill you, son. Right, to send it to him. Sends that letter, Nur ad-Din gets it, says, oh, okay, I'm not coming to Cairo. Good, you take care of it, at least we know where everyone's at, okay? He goes back to Syria. Okay. His father, shortly after that, passes away. Okay. So a lot of people are dying in Salahuddin's life. Okay. So I mean, it was interesting because in 1170, even though we're at 1173 right now, that's when Salahuddin's father comes to Cairo. His name was Ayyub, That's why his name Yusuf ibn Ayyub, right? And his nickname was Najm ad-Din, the star of the deen, if you will. And so a lot of people say this was kind of like Yaqub alayhi salam coming to meet Yusuf alayhi salam, right? Because now Nur ad-Din's at power and his father's coming, who was the governor in Baalbek, remember, in Syria. So his father comes to be with him, okay? And so Salahuddin, so in 1173, Salahuddin's father passes away in Cairo with him. So he was able to go back and see his father, have that meeting with them, and then his dad ended up dying, shortly afterwards. So Salahuddin this is his brothers here. His Abu Bakr, Tarunsha, Shashin Shah, Tuganing, and Bori. These are all like Kurdish names, so this is not my specialty. And he had two daughters, Sit al-Shams and Rabia al-Khartoum. Okay. So interesting names. But anyway, so Salahuddin has other brothers to help him out, right? We talked about Turansha, who came and supporting him in Cairo, right? Obviously, the daughters don't really fight and so forth, but he has sisters. He has sisters there also, okay? But Salahuddin loses his father here. So he doesn't have his father with him anymore. So now, once again, we talked about that. I wanted to go over, take away from the battles and the killings and all this kind of, treachery that's going on. I kind of want to talk about the rulers and who are the scholars at that time, right? And how the scholars played a big role against the Shia and the Ismaili Aqidah and their teachings, and how did they combat that? So the first character I want to bring up is, I think we all should know this individual, named Nizamuddin, or Nizam al-Mulk. Nizam al-Mulk is in Baghdad, okay? But he was one of the wazirs of the Seljuks, but he founded something called the Nizami madrasas, right? That he made this new madrasa really preaching Sunni Islam and teaching it and making sure there's scholars of it so they could go out and disseminate it and make people know their Aqidah very well. Because honestly, the more lay people like myself, you're just following what other people do and what you kind of hear. Okay, nobody has Google and ChatGPT and they can look up things, if you will. You can download books, right? Even today, if you go to some village in Pakistan probably, or in Egypt, and you tell some grandma there that tomorrow is Yawm al-Qiyamah, she'll be like, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do? Right? She'll probably believe you. She'll be like, no, they're very simple-minded people. And so it's very important that people don't take advantage of that and start teaching, Shiaism or other things, or Ismailism. And so Nizam al-Mulk founded this school, and this is where Imam Ghazali, rahimahullah, grows up in. Now, this is where Imam Ghazali, even though he's not around the time of Salahuddin and Nur ad-Din and so forth, he dies in 1111, which he probably caught the end of Nur ad-Din's life. I mean, the beginning of Nur ad-Din's life. Nur ad-Din's father, Imad ad-Din, would probably been alive at that time. I don't know if they ever met, though, right? Imam Ghazali writes a book, Ihya Ulumuddin, the revival of Islamic sciences. I think everyone here has heard about it. If you haven't, then definitely something you should know. Where he kind of revives Sunni Islam, tasghiyah, right? Adab, mannerism, fiqh. In that book, it goes over ibadat also, right? And so he produces this book also, goes out, it gets disseminated. There's Abdul Qadir Jilani, rahimahullah, he's in Iraq area, and I know there's a stigma behind him because some of his followers do things that maybe that they shouldn't be doing, but I'm just talking about him in general as a scholar, right? As a person, was an amazing individual, okay, in terms of scholarly. What people worship, or what they worshipped him, or what they did to his grave and stuff afterwards is something else, right? But he was definitely a very amazing scholar at his time and what he did in terms of preaching to the people. This is Nur ad-Din. Obviously, he's not a scholar, but this is kind of where he fits in here. He dies at 1174. So he's alive during the time of Abdul Qadir Jilani, rahimahullah. He doesn't catch Imam Ghazali. He's born 70 years afterwards. Ibn al-Jawzi, rahimahullah, you guys should know him. Ibn al-Jawzi, he takes Imam Ghazali's book, Ihya Ulumuddin. If you guys tell me, that there's a lot of criticism of Ihya Ulumuddin, that there's narrations that are not very authentic, and maybe stories that are not, go goes back with a chain of narrations back to the Prophet ﷺ and other things, if you will. So a lot of criticism to that book, but nonetheless, it has a lot of virtue. So Ibn Jawzi, says, let me take that book and kind of clean it up and make sure all the correct narrations are there and so forth. And so he writes a book called Minhaj al-Qasidin, which is the same thing. You look at the book, it's just like Ihya al-Ulumuddin. If you guys know Ihya al-Ulumuddin, Imam Ghazali broke it up into 4 sections. One's like ibadat, one is like mannerism, one of the things that you should do, things that you shouldn't do. Like these are the 4 things that, hopefully I'm getting it right, if I remember it well, that the 4 main books of this, if you will. So ibadat is salah, fasting, zakat, and so forth. And so Ibn Jawzi does the same thing, but he fixes up all the narrations and kind of rewrites it. But it's also very, very long. Okay. So Ibn Qudama al-Maqdisi, rahimahullah, you should know his name now, because he takes Minhaj al-Qasidin and he does a Mukhtasar. Mukhtasar is an abbreviation of the book. And this is the book I wanted to teach right after this Salahuddin series, and maybe we'll start doing this on these Tuesday nights. It's a book of tazkiyah, though. It's more so about patience and mannerism and, dealing with, hasad and envy and jealousy and all the diseases of the heart and other things, if you will. And ibadat is also part of it. So I would like to teach this, but maybe just a portion of it. We'll see, inshallah ta'ala, if we will do it. So why did I put this here? Because this is a book that was being circulated around that time. These are what people were reading, right? These are the scholars at the time that are combating the Sunni, the Shiaism, and educating the people, getting them back, and they're playing their role. And Nuruddin had a lot of group of scholars. He was very, very close to the shuyukh and the ulama and the qudah, the qadis that were there. He had a very close relationship with them, right? Salahuddin also has a close relationship with them also. And that's also part of that, of building a society, that he built the society on ilm, on knowledge, and not just, festivals and celebrations and other things, if you will, also. So I wanted to list here. There's a lot more names I'm not placing here that are also a part of this, but kind of show you who are those individuals at that time, their books and so forth.
Ibn Jawzi is the one who established the rule of the Qira.
Ibn Jawzi, no, that would be Ibn Jawziya. So it sounds similar.
So that's the okay.
Yeah, Jawziya and Jawzi. And there's a lot of other scholars of Qira'at. Shatibiya is another one, Imam Shatibiya. And so Shatibi, he also wrote on Qira'at also. So he wrote books on that too, but he was a little bit different. So right there, he wrote, he was a Hanbali scholar and a historian and other things. Hanbali is not, it says a lot of them were Hanbali there, but not all of them were. Yeah, Imam Ghazali was a big Shafi'i scholar. Imam Ghazali, like one of the. Yeah. They do. Yeah, because Hanbali, Imam Ahmed ibn Hanbal was in Baghdad. He was in Iraq. And that's kind of where that school formulated also. And remember, he's after all the other Shafi'i and Imam Abu Hanifa. So he's had a lot of remembrance in there, even though today it's more Saudi that follows the Hanbali school, but that's where, at least in that area, where the origins of his teachings were. Right, yeah. Good question. All right, so I kind of wanted to put that there. Let's talk about this. So here we talk about this. Remember I told you Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like from his qadr, kind of opened doors for Salahuddin. So we had Shirku pass away, Nuruddin gets pushed up. He has issues with the Fatih Khalifa, and guess what? He just dies. So alhamdulillah, didn't have to assassinate him, and guess what? No opposition to there. Later on in here is that Nuruddin Zanki himself ends up passing away. He ends up dying. So that whole tension, that is Nuruddin going to try to think I'm trying to outmaneuver him, he might attack me, because he was actually planning to attack Cairo. And so that's also something that Salahuddin didn't want to deal with, and Allah just took it out, where he ended up passing away in 1174. Remember, so all this is happening in this 1174. But Nuruddin did a lot of things I really wanted to focus on, is that he just celebrated the way that he died, just celebrated a son that he had, and he was doing his aqiqah, and then it was a time for Eid, and then right in the days of Eid, he passed away. So the days that are blessed and, that are from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, honoring him. He wasn't like his father. He didn't drink. right? He was, alhamdulillah, on his salah, right? He loved the ilm, right? He had scholars next to him, etc., right? Alhamdulillah, that Allah honored him, that he died in these blessed days. His achievements, that he was able to construct numerous fortresses to defend the Muslims against the Crusaders. Remember, that is the number one defense, is how big those walls, if you look here, how big those walls are. Imagine how long they took them to build that fortress, right? And so if you have a good engineering team that could build a good fort for your people, that's their lifeline. They're going to survive. And so he focused a lot on that, building the fortresses. He built a lot of masajid, around 42 schools in Damascus and Aleppo, teaching hadith and fiqh and other things, right? And had it free for students to go to. We talked about suppressing Ismailism and the Shiaism there. He was a just ruler. He even had Christians that would live under him, that, you know, they respected him. They didn't try to plot and kill him. He built hospitals and caravans. They're like these areas, that hotels kind of, in the caravan routes where people could stay, right? Back in those days, if you're a traveler, you get free food, you get free lodging. That's how things used to be back in the day. Left a strong foundation for Salahuddin to take over there. So he really left this foundation of ilm, defending the Muslims, for Salahuddin now to take over. Salahuddin's, his idea was never to overtake Nuruddin. He never wanted to do that. And what you're going to see right here, we're going to continue next week, is that who's going to take over after Nuruddin? Remember, it's all about family relationships. So Salahuddin's a Kurd. He's not a Zangid. So he's not even in the line for the next one. It is the son of Nuruddin that's going to take over. But guess what? He's really young. So what do you think people try to do? Manipulate his mind. That, oh, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And Salahuddin loves Nuruddin. But they were really close, even though there's a little, seemed like friction there. But he loved Nuruddin. He knows what he did with his father and took care of his father. So he wants to make sure that his son is the one truly in power, and he's not being manipulated by the people around him that are taking his money and making him do this and making him do that. But Salahuddin's sitting in Cairo. That means he has to go all the way to what? Syria. And that's his next move. That he's coming now with his army, right? He doesn't want to fight, but you can't walk by yourself. You have to have some type of clout or no one's going to listen to you. And he's going to come with his army over to Syria to confront those who are taking care of Nuruddin's son, because he's the next sultan now. And who is that son? What is he doing? Right? You could think that people are trying to assassinate him because they want power. And Salahuddin knows that too, so he wants to protect him. And we're going to see all that kind of plays out. Now, Salahuddin doesn't want to kill another Muslim's life. He got enough of the Crusaders to worry about. He wants to spill their blood, not the Muslim blood. So he doesn't want to attack Damascus or Aleppo. That's going to look really bad. So how do you maneuver, right? And we're going to see how he works that out. So we'll talk about that next week, inshallah ta'ala. Nuruddin, really quick, I think it's our last slide here. Nuruddin was known for capturing the first Crusader state in the region, responsible for capturing and imprisoning Reynald the Shaitan. Remember him? He's like the shaitan of the shaitans of that time. So when Nuruddin captured Reynald, he was in prison for 16 years. Now, what you're going to see is that when Nuruddin's son comes into power, he lets him go. Now, why would you let him go for? That's a whole nother story we'll talk about, okay? So there's two sons there that Nuruddin left over, 11-year-old Ismail, and you have Muhammad. And I think I forgot I think he's only like a year, he's days old. Remember, he was just born, right? So it's Ismail, 11-year-old. That's not going to go well. No one's going to respect him. They'll take him as a leader, but someone else has to call the shots, right? So who's that really going to call the shots for him? His brother's son, so Nuruddin's brother's son, Saifuddin, started taking over different areas in Haran and Odessa and collecting taxes. Damascus, there's an Amir there, is in Ibn Muqaddim, took custodian of Nuruddin's son, Ismail, and decided to be the leader. So this guy says, you know what, he's a little child, he can't take over. I'll be the next leader. I'll take over as Amir, not Sultan, Amir. These titles are, doesn't make too much difference there. So Ibn al-Muqaddam went to Aleppo, took over the leader there. So you can see what he's trying to do now, this guy. And when Salahuddin hears about that, he says, I got to go over there to Syria. Okay. Ibn Adaya, by tricking him and imprisoning him. So they go to Aleppo, they take this guy who's a leader in Aleppo, they imprison him, and this Ibn Muqaddim says, you know what, I'm now in charge of Damascus and Aleppo. Everyone's, hold on, where's Ismail? What, he's 11 years old, he probably doesn't know what to say, but you know, what's going on here? What kind of funny business is going on here? And Salahuddin is going to make his way over there. Okay. I'll allude to something right now. Remember I tell you about Qadr. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also at this time made it that Amalric dies. So you have the Khalifa of the Fatimids gone. You have, of course, Shirkuh died, and then Salahuddin got pushed forward. The Khalifa of the Fatimids dies. You have Nuruddin dying, so there's no more tension between me and him. And then your enemy, your really enemy, you kind of forgot about who the enemy here is, the Crusaders in Jerusalem. And that's Amalric. He's a king of Jerusalem. He dies. So guess what? Jerusalem's in shambles now. Amalric has a son. He takes over. His name is Baldwin the Fourth. There's like lots of Baldwins. If you get confused, you are justified for being confused. And so some of you watched the movie Kingdom of Heaven. He's the one that has leprosy. That he ends up being king. He ends up being king for about 11 years or so. But he's like dying as he's being king. It's like, you know, leprosy kind of eats at your nerves and your body and your skin and your face. And he's the one that wears a mask. He wears like an iron mask on his face because it doesn't look very pleasing to look at because of the disease that he's going through. So he becomes into power. He is ended up dying, but he's dying on the way. But he's the one that's going to meet Salahuddin. And now Salahuddin is going to have to face him. He has I don't want to ever say the Crusaders had good people, but he wasn't like Renaud, like the Shaitan Renaud here, you know, but he was a little bit more reasonable. We'll see what Salahuddin, how he interacts with him, and what happens after that. So that's all set up, inshallah ta'ala, for next Tuesday. I went a little bit longer, so you guys want to have a little bit break here. So,
just one quick question. What is the authenticity of that? People talk about that at the time of Nuruddin Zengi, he saw it.
Fortress in Iraq, and make the Muslim come and pay money to visit the Prophet's grave. That's how crazy this guy was. Okay, and he was serious. It wasn't like a joke. And so we sent an army to go down to Medina, and so Salahuddin has to go and stop that. So this could be rolled into what you're kind of saying here, but I'll look that up inshallah ta'ala and see how that is also. But there is true there is a lead covering over the a wall around there, so people don't dig it up. And who did it though? I need to look that up. Any other questions or comments? Yeah, Hindi.
By this time, the Zengi Empire was secure all through Medina,
Yeah.
Tunisia, and that entire map is basically.
Yes, this area here. But obviously, when Nuruddin passes away, anytime you have any leader pass away, people get a little shaky. So you're going to see this has all become Salahuddin's land now. He's going to be the Sultan of this whole area. So it's definitely going to happen then.
Yeah.
Inshallah. All right, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of you and we're in with the dua. Allahumma anta salam wa minka salam tabarakta ya dhu jalal ikram. Allahumma inni ala dhikrika wa shukrika wa husni ibadatik. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. Ya Rahman Ya Rahim. We ask you to forgive us for our wrongdoings. We ask you to accept this class from us and put it on a scale of hasanat yawm al-qiyamah. Make it a proof for us and a proof against us. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun mursaleen. Alhamdulillahi rabbil. Barakallahu feekum.
Allah